So we are live. Welcome everybody, and this is the fourth, maybe the fifth of the Meet the Mayors, and we're doing a quarterly, we do our quarterly updates. So for those of you who have, this is the first one, wonderful, thanks for being here. For those of you who have watched a few of these, please, feedback, whatever we can do. If there's something you have interest in hearing about, or an update that's maybe happened a few months back and you want to know, hey, where is that? All things at the city take their time and they're very structured, and there's reasons, huge reasons for that. We have to be able to fulfill and action and make sure that the things we're doing are done right for everybody. So it sometimes can take a little bit of time. So these things may come back. You'll see some of these conversations. But today I wanted to talk about just about 4 or 5 small things that I think are really important as we're going into the fall. And wanted to talk about our biggest one here, which is our Unified Development Code. So if you've been following the city over the last 4 years, there has been a major rewrite that we have been going through on our development code. And for those of you that don't speak governmentese, development code is pretty simple. It's the set of rules that we have in place for whenever somebody wants to develop a property within the city. So those are residential development codes, those are commercial development codes. So they cover everything from sidewalk design all the way to roof lines. They cover a ton of stuff. And those development codes were established maybe back in the 80s, and over time the rules have changed, the way people use space has changed, and so we looked at our design code and we had 4 different binders, each of them at least 200 pages apiece, and you were jumping from one to the other to find definitions, to find out, okay, if I needed to build this, well, that part is over here, and it just became really unwieldy. And one of the challenges we have is that when developers do come into cities like a Lewisville, they have to redevelop. They don't have a piece of empty ground, or residents have a property and they maybe want to do something different with it that wasn't really designed into the code, so they have to get variances, and it takes time, and then they have to go see different boards or commissions or even get it passed by city council. And those are things that just, they slow down the wheels, and especially in a state like Texas where we have a lot of property rights, it makes sense to give people options with their property. So this Unified Development Code, over the last 4 years, we've gotten it down into one manual, about 600 pages, and we are asking for public input here on October 25th. You can find that information on the city website, so just go to cityoflewisville.com and you can find that in the events section. But on the 25th, we're going to have an open house. We're going to take people through all the major changes in the development code, and we're really excited about that. But I wanted to give a quick heads up on some of the specific changes that we're dealing with and that we think are, I think, quite frankly, the most important. So, as we talked about, how do we better align our development with what we have in our 2025 vision plan and the small area plans? And so that is, how do we incentivize sustainability? How do we incentivize maybe smaller footprints? How do we incentivize building spaces where people want to come? Too often our development has been centered around, you know, okay, I'm going to drive somewhere and then I'm going to drive somewhere else, I'm going to drive somewhere else to get all my work done or all my chores done. And so what we're seeing in Lewisville and across the country is people want to have that stuff closer together. And so how do we do that in a way that makes sense for people and makes a place livable? And some of that is also, how do we create a design language around that neighborhood or that section? So you know, hey, when I'm in this part of town, visually it's part of Old Town, or visually it's part of the Northern Gateway. And so those are some of the things we talk about as far as the alignment and implementation. New forms of development, things change, right? We talked about that, and we'll talk about a couple of those in a second. How do we make it easier? And again, time is money, so if we want people to reinvest in Lewisville, if we want them to go through the difficulty of taking a piece of property that already has some use on it and changing that use, well, we better have a streamlined process to make it easier for them. Make them more user-friendly, so lots more graphics, lots more pictures, lots more graphs, so you can just go to one page and see, okay, these are the 5 things that this land use gives me, and these are the 6 things that this one does. So that way they don't have to flip through pages and kind of build their own graph, if you will. More business-friendly, conflicts between codes. Yes, amazingly enough, city ordinances do have some conflicts. Things get written over time. They're living documents. Sometimes that you get conflicts, or you get definitions that aren't quite the same, and you have to figure that out. Happens at every level of government, and when we run into it, we try and change it, but every so often you just kind of need to start from scratch. And then, of course, some best practices in how we regulate this. So here's the bit of info there on the 25th, and then we're almost to the end of this process, by the way. So when you take a look at the 4 years, we started here with code review committees, technical committees and roundtables, joint city council and planning and zoning committee, all the way through multiple touches with our consultants. And it's important, we have some folks that came from out of Lewisville that look at development patterns throughout the country and say, hey, here are some tweaks, here are some things that might fit for your community. And that's why we have those folks from the outside bring in new ideas, and then we have our internal teams, our city council, our planning and zoning, our staff kind of look and see what makes the most sense for Lewisville. So we're right over here at the very end here, and on the YouTube you'll be able to see it because it'll be like there's a picture right next to me instead of back here behind me. But you can see this has been a long process. And so one of the big things I think that residents are going to want to see is, what does this mean for my single family residents? And folks, we're excited about the opportunities here. We're looking at ways to make housing more affordable and make it so that folks can stay in their homes longer and maybe perhaps have a little more space. So one of the things that we have rolled out is in certain zonings of homes, you can add what's called an accessory dwelling unit, an ADU. This is fully plumbed, fully electrical. It's a home, but it could be a mother-in-law suite, or it could be something for your kids to move back from college into, or maybe you want to do a multi-generational family and you don't have that extra bedroom that you need. This is a way to fill in that space a little bit more. Maybe you want to do this as a rental in the back of your property, and as long as your property has the space for it, part of the zoning, you can create these opportunities to generate revenue or give yourself more space or to help out families. So there's a lot of flexibility now as opposed to the older way of doing things. And quite frankly, this was a development pattern that is 200-300 years old in this country, in the United States. When I lived in New England, one of the homes that we had actually had a carriage house behind it. And a carriage house in New England is really what we call a garage in Texas. It's pretty simple, but it had a small mother-in-law suite up on the top of the garage, and it was separated from the house. And hundreds, thousands of homes are built like this up in New England, and it gave people more flexibility. So we think this is a great option. Of course, if you don't want it, you don't have it, but it is another option on your property if you want. It also helps with our commercial developers, which I'm excited about, is if they don't want to have as much parking as maybe they need, and I think we all know that parking is, especially now that we do a lot of our shopping online, parking in retailers is those parking lots are empty a lot of the time. Not even full at Christmas time like they used to be. So how do we incentivize to maybe put less of a footprint, less impact? Well, we've got options in our toolkit now that allow us to incentivize for nicer facades, better green space, those types of things in trade-off for reduced footprint on parking. So there's a lot of great things. Hopefully you can come by and see this on the 25th. We're excited, and I think it's going to make things just a lot easier for property owners in the city, as well as our staff. Next up, we have some information on our public safety. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about this. Every year we do a survey on where residents are. Is it every year, James, or is it every? Yeah. So I've got helpers in the back. This is kind of fun. But every year we do a community survey just to see where is everyone on safety, security. I mean, that's our baseline, right? As City Council, our baseline is creating a safe environment. So you can see in our 2022 public survey, it ran here in June, July. We had about 811 respondents. Self-selected. This is not an anonymous or one of those large surveys that goes out. So there's some reading into this because people do self-select in these types of surveys. But we went through our website, social media. We had mailroom posters at the largest apartment complexes, which I know we've really been pushing to reach out to our multifamily to get more feedback from them. And so this was one of the things that we did that's relatively new for the city, is to actually put that information right there as opposed to the other more traditional methods that we used. So what you're seeing from these key findings as far as Lewisville residents are concerned is that they feel very safe in all parts of the city, which we're excited about. We did have a few that reported they were very worried about crime, but this allows us to kind of look at, okay, where are those respondents coming from and where are they getting those feelings? What parts of the city do they believe they feel are less safe, so that we can maybe start targeting police presence in those areas? It gives us the opportunity to kind of move those resources around. And we see that fewer respondents reported that Lewisville has become safer while they've lived here, and more have reported that it's become less safe over this last survey. Now, that is, you got to look at the framing of these surveys. That we've seen a lot of information in the news, and I forget, there were a couple of incidents, I think, in the news right when this survey went out, and that tends to spike. And I think the biggest one at that time was Uvalde. So that tends to move where people feel in these. But overall, you know, we should take this seriously, because this is how they feel. What we do find, however, is that people's feelings about crime versus actual crime rates in the city are actually a little bit askew. When you come in and take a look at, you know, over 87%, almost 88% of those who reported were overall very satisfied with the department. So they like what our PD's doing. They feel like the PD's out there. But what we're seeing is that residents are really relying on inaccurate sources of media, and they know it. This is the kind of the funny part about all of this. People know, and they report that, hey, the most accurate places to find information are the city's website, the police station, the news reports, not on social media. And yet the vast majority of folks say that the primary place that they get their news about crime is on social media. Folks, don't do that. So it's that knee-jerk reaction. You know, just double check, ask a question. Our police, our staff, your city council, we're all available to answer those questions. And quite frankly, almost all of them are on social media. So you could just quickly tab over and say, hey, what about this? And maybe get an answer that's more complete, or less salacious, or doesn't have an agenda behind it. So something to take a look at. So we're also seeing, you know, reduced crime rates throughout the city, which is great, because there are some trends across the country that are a little concerning about especially violent crimes. So we're trying to make sure that we don't align with that piece. But our PD is doing a great job. So the biggest challenge that we have, I think, is really just that our public communication is getting drowned out by social media. And so we've got to do a better job of getting pointed information out to residents in a more timely manner. And so that's probably a few more communication resources that are necessary for our police department and for our general communications team, but we're exploring those options as City Council to see what's the most effective. So bigger challenges, of course, are, you know, hiring and retaining officers, making sure that our engagement and outreach is working the way it's supposed to, and of course, public education and information. And for those of you who maybe want to know more about how our public safety works, we have two wonderful Citizens University programs, both for the fire department and the police department. And that would be a great way for you to kind of wrap your head around all the different things that our city does for residents to keep them safe. I think that would give you a much better window. So if you have concerns about how things are going, that would be a great program for you to get involved with. Pretty straightforward. So there's a few more bullet points on this slide. I'm not going to read through them all, but you can take a look. But if you have questions or comments or concerns or would like to add to the information, please reach out to myself, city staff, city council. We're all available to have that conversation and get you the information you need. Now, one of my favorites for today is I want to talk a little bit about our new metrics system. What we've done in the city is pretty amazing. It's all internal, by the way. So shout out to the IT department, because we actually have our own Google Hook API that communicates between all of our systems, that allows us to move information from one system to another and create these wonderful dashboards. Several years ago, City Council said, hey, we want to be more data driven. We want to make decisions based on real facts and numbers, not just gut feel. Gut feel may be an interesting way to start the conversation, but if you don't have data behind it, you're just kind of flailing around. And you know, tax dollars, we need to be very respectful of how those are used. So having data behind those decisions is vital to me. What we did then is we created this dashboard, and you can actually go onto the city website, just type in dashboard, and you'll find some information. But there are whole pages for all of the 2025 plan, for all of our departments, where you get metrics, things that actually measure how the city is performing. And what's important is that these metrics aren't just for us as residents to look at and say, hey, it's green, hey, it's yellow, hey, it's red. These are metrics that are important key performance indicators for our departments. So if our water department goes to that page and they see a key performance indicator is not doing well, it gives the management of that department the tools to go back to staff and say, hey, here's where we need to change things up, or I noticed that this is drifting in a direction we don't want it to go. How do we fix that? So police, fire, water, all of those departments have key performance indicators that roll up into these dashboards. So we're not just measuring to measure, we're actually measuring for performance. And quite frankly, it helps our employees do that much better because they can really focus on the things that move the needle, both figuratively and literally. But we've got this new metrics board coming up, and you can see here there's a whole public safety section, over 20 departments, goals and explanations. So you can get in there and you can actually see, what is the city moving towards? We're not just static. So here are some of the examples, and again, very visual, easy to see. Neighborhood services, you can see spending, you can see public services, and of course we have some links here on this, so if you are on the YouTube watching this, you probably can just look below me. Yeah, isn't that what the YouTubers do now? They just point down or they point up for different things on the page. I don't know, but these links you can actually get to from YouTube. So, but you can see it's all visual, it's designed to be really quick, and you can get a good bite-sized look at how the city's performing. Next topic, People for Prairies. We were recognized this year as the first recipient of a Prairie Protectors Award for municipalities. And so for those of you who are residents of Lewisville, you may have been seeing a bit more of this stuff. Native plants, not just a monoculture of grass. And quite frankly, most of the grass around Texas is a collection of weeds that we may or may not want, that just mowed to a certain height. But the People for Prairies recognized us because the city has been doing some amazing things as far as reintroducing native plant populations and things that are more sustainable. So these plants spent, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years learning how to live in North Texas. And so from drought to rain to freeze, all the good stuff that, some of us have a challenge getting through on a day-to-day basis. These plants know how to do it. And so you can see here, I've got a few examples. We've got Thrive Nature Park, of course, and also right across the street at Thrive, you can see where we've actually built the space around rainwater collection and native plants and erosion control, all designed with native structures as opposed to bringing in something from outside that's maybe invasive or doesn't really live up to what we need it to do. If I'm replacing trees every 5-10 years, that gets really costly as opposed to something that's designed to live here. So you see these pocket prairies that are around. Pollinator gardens is what a lot of us call them, but you're going to see more of those throughout the city. It reduces our overall cost of maintenance. It also provides really great visual appeal, and sometimes in some parts of the year that may look a little scraggly, but that's also providing food and habitat for all of our native plants and our native animals and insects. So it gives them a place to live over winter, or, we're on the big North American migratory path for tens of thousands, if not millions of different birds that come across between South America and North America. And so they need a pit stop. So think of this as a Buc-ee's for birds, maybe a way to look at it. But you can see, if you get into Old Town, you can see in our public infrastructure, instead of dumping that rainwater runoff straight into our water sewer system, rainwater collection, we actually have these green spaces where the roots and the plants actually start to pre-treat some of that water, and they keep the flooding down because they capture that water and then slowly release it. Think of it like a sponge. When we get these flooding events that we get more and more of, right? We get massive amounts of water dumped on us really quickly. The more of this permeable surface that we can allow water to kind of sit and then gradually be released actually gives us less impact on our total stormwater system. So it allows us to kind of slow that down over time. All that water is still going to end up in the lake or in the river, but over a period of time as opposed to instantaneously. So really excited. You can see some of these examples again at Thrive. You can see them here on in Old Town on Main and Mill. It's also going to be built into the discussions and implementation in many other streets as they get rebuilt throughout the city. So this is one of those things you're going to see more and more of over time. But yeah, take a look. This is the parking lot of Thrive. So instead of Thrive Rec Center being just one giant piece of concrete, it has all of these great rainwater collection pieces built into it. So we're excited about being a champion for prairies, and we also, you're going to see more of that. I think the next big space you're going to see that is down the Garden Ridge median. So we have that large stretch of greenbelt there. We put the new trail in. There's an opportunity there for more pollinator gardens and whatnot. So you're going to see a lot of that this next year, and then we'll incrementally be moving that across parts of the city as time and budget permit. Finally, I did want to mention that we do have our holiday stroll coming up here at the end of the year, which is kind of the capstone event for the year, and that this year is going to be on Saturday, December 3rd. Of course, selfies with Santa. We've got our pancake breakfast. We've got a lot of our vendors down here and businesses, so it's a great day. We're going to have the tree lighting event that we do every year, and music and movies in the plaza. So come on down. It's a great family event. I know there's hot cocoa somewhere, but keep an eye open for that and book that time out on your calendar. So that's what I have as far as information for today. I know we've got some residents here as well as city staff members, so if anybody has any questions, I'll open the floor up for that and see where we go. I love putting people on the spot. Based on the silence, it sounds like we're about done with today's update. So I would appreciate it if you do have time. Put a comment down below, check the links out for the city website, see what's interesting, see if there's more information there that you might be able to pick up from, and reach out to your city staff, reach out to your city council members, your mayor. We're all here to make the city better, so we love the input. With that, anything else from the audience? Y'all have a lovely afternoon. We'll see you later.